All right, so we want to find the point on the graph of the square root of x that's closest to this 0.30. So if we think about what the function of that graph of the square root of x is, remember your square root of x will always be positive. So we will have an increasing graph, and we want to identify some point x, y that's closest to 30. 30 is right here on the x-axis. So because our function of the graph is the square root of x, remember f of x is the same thing as y equals square root of x. We want to know this unknown point, some x, comma, our y coordinate, which would be the value of our function square root x. So we want to find x square root x. Step one, we want to use our distance formula. So recall your distance formula, you'll take the square root of the differences between your x coordinates squared plus the differences between your y coordinates squared. In our case, our x coordinates are x and 3. So down here, we substitute x minus 3 squared. Our y coordinates, square root x and 0. So we substitute square root x minus 0 squared. Okay. Next, we're going to simplify x minus 3 squared. That expands to x squared minus 6x plus 9. And then the square root x minus 0 squared, that just gives us x. So we just carried that down. We wind up with that square root of x times itself, and that gives us x. Simplify by combining like terms. We combined negative 6x and x to get negative 5x. So here's our distance formula. Simplifies to x squared minus 5x plus 9. Now we're going to take those terms that are underneath the square root. We're going to use those terms to help us with the next step. So our function now that we're looking to solve, we want to know what are these values that x squared minus 5x plus 9. Step 3, let's find that first derivative of those terms of that x squared minus 5x plus 9. And when we take the first derivative, we'll get 2x minus 5. Set that first derivative function equal to 0 and solve for x to get our critical number. So 2x minus 5 we set equal to 0. We add 5 and divide by 2, we'll get x equals 5 halves. This is our critical number. Now recall the given function. We were given this function of f of x equals square root x. Now we'll substitute that critical number for x. So what is the value of this function when x is 5 halves? It's the square root of 5 halves. So our point will be identified in the last step as our x coordinate, which we substituted as our critical number, 5 halves, and the y coordinate would be square root 5 halves. So the closest point to that given value of that function would be 5 halves, comma, square root 5 halves.